I helped. Oops. I may have started a little early. Sorry, guys. Again, my name is Crystal Mucci. I run CRM bookkeeping and consulting in Sandwich. I help small business owners with all their finances, understanding what's happening, how to read their reports, and what kind of software processes they need, and that's customized to their business. I'm also a SCORE subject matter expert in regards to QuickBooks. So if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me there as well. Today we're going to go over what QuickBooks Online can do. It's going to be a broad overview of everything that's possible. We're not really going to dive deep into anything in particular, but I will show you how to do certain things when we're there. I'll have you guys follow along with some slides. Today we're hopefully going to get through which QuickBooks version and all things customers. Our next meeting will hopefully be vendors and banking and some of those other things. And the third class is whatever we miss and the live. So I think we're ready to get started. Let me share my screen. I'm able to share my screen, right? Pam?
Yeah.
Or Trisha? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a reminder, if you're not muted, please mute. I'm going to try to mute everyone, but.
Okay. Everybody can see it?
Yes,
Pam,
we
Trisha?
can.
Okay, perfect. We're going to dive in. The first thing is, basic questions. What do you use QuickBooks for? Why would you want to use it? And stuff like that. It is to basically categorize all your transactions for your business in one place. So some people have multiple credit cards, multiple checking accounts. Sometimes, even though I hate it, you have personal stuff that we've got to enter in for business. So you get to put all that information into QuickBooks, and then you get to run easy reports for yourself to look at how's your business really doing, and not forgetting, I've got something here, or, oh, I forgot to do this. It's all that banking and transactional stuff in one place. You've got the ability to have internal reports. There's inventory reports as well as your normal profit and loss and balance sheet. Your profit and loss is just your income and your expenses, what you've paid, your net income before, at the end of all of that. Your balance sheet shows what you owe and what's owed to you. And then there, like I said, there's other financial reports of, you can get started into which products are selling, how much inventory do you have, how much do people owe you, how much do you owe other people, that type of things that just kind of show what your business is doing and how it's looking. It also helps with those same reports for external bodies, for any kind of tax reporting that you may have to do. Restaurants, how they have to do sales tax as well as their meals tax, retail, how they're doing their sales tax. What else is there? Your bank loans. A lot of your banks will ask for that. And so having it in QuickBooks Online gives you the opportunity to just have all that stuff. And when they ask, you can just run a quick report, and it makes your life a lot easier. And then, so it also gives you, again, I mentioned before, which products are selling, which services are selling. A lot of the times we get stuck in this trap of, oh, it sells, it's making me money. And all it's doing is a really high turnover, but you're making a couple cents per thing. So it gives you those breakdowns. And again, who pays you money, who you owe money. And that's about it for that. There are different versions that are out there for you. This list is where most people are going to fit in. So you're going to most likely fit into Simple Start, Plus, or Advanced. The differences are mostly what your user count is going to be, what kind of reports and how detailed you can get in them for which ones they are, and then what kind of sales channels that you can use. There's a limit to them in some of the lower ones, where the higher ones, you can just do anything. Sales channels would be any kind of online e-commerce type of things. So say Shopify, Etsy, Amazon, those type of apps that you can put in there, connect to QuickBooks, and you're good. So, and then you've got your inventory and your payroll that will be different with Advanced. But all of them basically give you the same thing. You get a free guided setup in the beginning, where QuickBooks Online asks you all these questions. What's your business name? What kind of stuff do you do? What kind of industry are you in? So therefore it can give you a very general chart of accounts, but it's for your industry. You have 1 to 5, many users that you can sign up for depending on your account, is which ones you can do, which ones you'll be able to have, how many you'll be able to have. All of them do allow 2 accountant users as a free of charge type of deal. So you're able to have a CPA, a bookkeeper, or somebody else go into there, and it does not count against your users. Banking is a QuickBooks sponsored capital that's there. They allow checking accounts, they have loans now, different things like that. You, again, track your income and expenses, capture receipts. Maximize tax deductions is really just knowing what you're able to do by entering into those transactions, but there are some reportings that could help you there. Again, mileage tracking, cash flow management, being able to invoice and accept payments to your customers, run, again, various different reports, estimates, being able to sales tracks, being able to track your 1099 vendors. Those are due by the end of the month, by the way. And then when you get into these bigger ones, you start getting into additional things with payroll and where your help support is going to be and where vendors and stuff are. So these are vendors. When you start with Plus, you're able to do vendor pay bills, track them. You're able to enter time for your employees. And then this is tracking inventory and project profitability, which allows you to have classes and locations that you're able to do. And then a lot of these, as they're listed, it's a lot of what can you do with Excel. Some of these in advanced, you can actually do some fancy stuff with them, which is kind of cool. You've got customer service support all the time. And that's kind of, a little bit it. A lot of these, there are very few people that are going to be in advanced. The only time you really will see people that need advanced are people that do have multiple locations and need to seriously track them. The same thing with classes, is if you have different things that you need to track and run special reports for, advanced would probably be the one you're in. But you can get by with some of that in Plus. And I did just want to point out as well that QuickBooks Self-Employed and Essentials are still there. I do believe that they're trying to get rid of Essentials at some point, but it's still active. So not Simple Start, Self-Employed is a very basic QuickBooks. It goes for anywhere from full prices, about $20 to I think $40 if you have some kind of tax help that gets attached to it. It is a quick app, and you just say personal account, business account. It lets you run a little bit of a basic profit and loss by saying, here's how much income you can have, here's how much is expenses, but you don't break them down into all the different categories of, was this a purchase? Was this a office supply? This was utilities, that type of thing. You don't have that kind of flexibility. It's very rigid in that respect. And Essentials would fall right in between the Simple Start and Plus. The only major differences would be that you have 3 users. Your reporting is more towards the general side, but there is a little bit more detail that kind of brings it to the Plus side. But again, it's general reporting, 3 users, and you get, I believe it's 3 sales channels that you're allowed to get. And since a lot of you have not used QuickBooks Online before, desktop is not going away. The question is the pricing of desktop. Intuit really does want it, everybody on QuickBooks Online for the flexibility of it all and stuff like that. I can't see with the amount of QuickBooks desktop users that it's going away anytime soon, but they are continuously increasing the pricing to kind of price you out and force you into to online. So just kind of having that there, it's really a cost basis of, do you want to switch, do you not? It's not that you have to switch no matter what by July. So just would like to point that out. So we're going to get started on, ways to navigate through QuickBooks and the different ways to get to certain things. Just like QuickBooks Desktop, there are multiple ways to get to everything that you need in QuickBooks Online. So you're going to see the 4 different ways to navigate, or where we've got things highlighted here. It's a new button, this left menu. this, basically this home screen that they call getting it done, and then over here by the gear. We're gonna get into a little detail in just a couple slides to kind of describe what this is, but most of you will see this screen when you get done, when you start opening it, and you'll be able to get into wherever you need. The first one to go over is this new button. This new button has got things broken down to the most popular items with QuickBooks Online. It is going to do your vendor, your customers, your vendors, your employees, and other miscellaneous items. Where your customers are, you can do invoice.
Crystal, you just muted accidentally. There we go. I had that happen to somebody yesterday too.
When did you stop hearing me?
Oh, you said invoicing.
Okay, so we were on this screen. I don't have to go back up or anything.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so all I was saying is we're just going to start with the new screen, the new button, and this is where the most popular items are usually stored. That way, it's just an easy access for most people to get to what they need. It is divided up by customers, vendors, employees, and other miscellaneous type of items. With your customers, you will be able to do invoices, estimates, check payments, credit memos, if anybody uses those, sales receipts, which your POS usually uses, any refund receipts, which goes kind of with the sales receipts, delayed credits, delayed charges, and you can add a customer directly from here. Delayed credits and delayed charges, or something that if you would like to put all the information into QuickBooks today and tell it to charge your customer or to give a credit to your customer at a later date, that's usually what people use. Sometimes it makes sense in certain industries. A lot of people don't use it from what I can tell. So vendors, again, are going to be expenses, your bills, paying those bills, writing a check towards those expenses, any kind of purchase orders, vendor credits, credit card credits, print checks, and ad vendors. I would like to add that there seems to be a little bit confusion with more people that I talk to lately of what is a bill, what is an invoice, because your language within your industries is a little different than what QuickBooks does. So invoices, credits, and payments are on the customer side. So they are anybody that owes you money or anybody that you're going to bill to invoice yourself. Whereas the bills, the checks are on the vendor side. So again, I just wanted to kind of point that out to just make it a little bit clearer for people, because sometimes your industry, you have, oh, I'm sending a customer a bill, and then you get confused when you're in here with QuickBooks. So just wanted to throw that out there. And moving on to the last one, to this third one is payroll. Payroll is separate through QuickBooks, so you would have to have QuickBooks Payroll Core or something similar in order to run it, but you can use QuickBooks in order to do your time activities and your weekly timesheets and to keep track of employees from here. You do not have to have payroll for that. It's just your internal recording purposes. And again, like the other ones, you can add a contractor directly from here versus going into other screens. Then we have your bank deposit, your transfers from one bank account to the other. Sometimes QuickBooks will automatically try to have you transfer from credit cards to your checking account as well. As long as you're consistently doing that, then that's fine. If not, just put it as an expense towards credit card. But this is mainly from one bank to another bank. Your journal entries, which most of you would not even need to touch. That would be more along your lines of your CPA, your bookkeeper, or your external POS systems will sometimes go in as journal entries now instead of sales receipts. You can create statements for your customers. You can adjust inventory, pay down your credit card, and add products and services from here versus going into the gear where we used to. Most people you're going to see are going to get to some of those same things that I just mentioned, but you're going to get through to them from here on the left-hand screen. You're going to be able to edit this to personalize to what you need. So if you want, you can create bookmarks. If it's the first time, instead of saying bank transactions, you're gonna see create new bookmark. It's going to pop up a thing. Did I miss that screen? I don't know what happened to it. Okay, but there was a screen that I thought that we were able to, you can edit this by hitting this little pencil, creating your own personal shortcut. So therefore you don't have to go into each individual thing down here, check the thing, get your screen. You can just do a shortcut here. You can do the same thing with the menu. If you don't want to see some of this payroll, some of this time, some of those things, it brings up a little thing with a checkbox. You can uncheck it, and then it just makes it cleaner for stuff for you to use. So once you do start using this left menu bar, you're going to click on what you need. It's going to bring up this little arrow is going to bring up these 3 items for you, or some of the lists have 6 or 7 items depending on what you're doing. And those things are also going to show up here on this these different tabs. So if you just hit dashboard, you're going to see get things done first, then your business overview and your planner if you would like. The last way to get to things is this gear icon. It is also this gear icon is mainly for your internal processes for your company. Although you will see things as class list, record products, stuff like that, that will be in here. The account settings, which we will do in the live session, but this is where you can customize your invoices and the look of your estimates, and making sure that the right categories are there. You can make it so, do you use purchase orders? Do you not? What do you accept for payments? All that type of stuff would be found here. You manage your users. You'll be able to add people, give them, depending on which version you have, you can determine, do they only see customers? Do they only see vendors? Do they see both but not see, overview of your company? You can change all that stuff in here. Customized form styles is the same where I said up here where you're in your account settings, it has a shortcut that this is where your invoices, your estimates, it just kind of changes the look and make sure what it has everything that you need. Your chart of accounts is the backbone of QuickBooks. It has where everything is going to point to, which we'll go over more at a later date. And any kind of additional info that's there that shows up for your company that you can collect kind of in there. Your lists, again, are your item lists, any kind of class lists, any kind of recurring transaction shows up here. Your products and services actually show up there, even though both of those have their own little shortcuts. But that's where you're going to find your list of, even, do you accept credit card terms? Do you just want it to say credit card? That's kind of where you're going to find all that stuff. Any kind of attachments that have been done, if you can't find it through the direct vendor or the invoice, you can find it through here. It will bring up everything towards every customer and tell you where it's going, what it was attached to. Any kind of custom fields, tags, or rules that you have, you can create them here. Tags, the only thing I would say about those, this is the way people are not, can get by with not using classes sometimes, that they can just tag them to a particular project all the time. Always be project, everything, all these expenses and all this income goes to project A. You can name it that. The only thing I would like to tell you is to be consistent with your naming, because if you do project A and projects A or something like that, it's going to be separate things, and sometimes it gets a little messy. So just, if you're going to use tags, just be consistent. Your automatic rules will be right in here. You can grab them from there. Order checks is through QuickBooks now, so you can order them directly through QuickBooks. They pair up with Deluxe and checks by the mail and all those different companies in order to get you checks. But sometimes they are cheaper, so sometimes it's worth checking out. You can import your data from your old system, is where you would do this here. So any kind of your vendor list, your customer list, a product list, those would be imported here. Import all your desktop data. This will follow, you're going to follow all the directions in QuickBooks Desktop, back it up, get it where it needs to be and all cleaned up, and then import it into QuickBooks Online. If you are part of that group that's going to be switching or possibly thinking about switching, I would make sure that your QuickBooks Desktop data is as clean as you can possibly get it. any kind of miscellaneous things that are hanging out there, or things that are in undeposited funds or stuff like that. They make it the transition a little bit messy when coming in, so you want to just double check with that. You can export your data from here as well. This is, again, it's just kind of your vendor list, your customer list, that kind of data. If you needed to, you can also send it back to QuickBooks Desktop for some reason. If you decided you didn't like it, you would start here. Reconciling your budgeting, your audit log, which is telling you who does what in past transactions. If something was deleted, you can go back and find out who deleted it. And sometimes you just need to change it. Sometimes you just need to go talk to that person to find out what happened or tell them not to do it again. Smart Look and Resolution Center are in regards to QuickBooks themselves. So this gives you an easy look at allowing QuickBooks to look at your screen and to look at your file from and help walk you through something if you're having some kind of problems. These are more like technical problems, but they're able to look at them for you. Your Resolution Center is any kind of QuickBooks problems that you did have that have been resolved or possibly still open. You can look at them here. Your subscriptions in the last column are which version are you on, which invoices have they sent you, how much money have they billed you, that type of thing. You can go here. You can do feedback to QuickBooks and privacy. So privacy is, it shuts off certain items for you. So therefore, if you're opening up a library or a co-working space and stuff like that, and you don't want everybody to see this home screen, you can have privacy locks. So you have to actually go into different transactions and into the bank register for everybody to see it, not just anybody walking by. We have it as on our business view. If your accountant has it, you can switch views here. You can also go to the sample company for some of you in this screen. And that's kind of it. So again, this gear icon is in regards to a lot of things that are in regards to your company. So we're going to get into, hey, I guess I was a little bit fast. I knew there was a little screen. So we can basically skip this screen, but this is where I was talking about earlier, where we can have that left menu button that things pop up. You're able to change them to record, just to have your shortcuts, get rid of these things type of deal. This is the box I was talking about where you can uncheck them. You know, it's a pretty decent list of stuff that you can look at. So it is kind of cool. And again, as if you need to do that, you can do the menu at the same time. You can just click to the other tab and hit save. And then again, it's going to just show up here. So this screen, we're going to just start walking you through a little bit of what it looks like when you go to the dashboards and what some of these screens look like before we get into the invoices and the estimates. So you're going to go to dashboards, you're going to get this kind of home screen looking thing. It's going to look like, you know, it just gives you a little bit of shortcuts of the stuff that we just discussed up here in the new menu and stuff. So you can go directly to your projects, your products and services, your manager customers, kind of create invoices, send invoices, receive payments, any kind of payroll. Again, if you have payroll core or anything connected to it, you can go to pay your vendor bills. And then this down here is any kind of accounting transactions that you may need to see or any kind of reporting. I will say that this get business banking, this talk to a bookkeeper, this business insurance, and the get funding, these are all through QuickBooks. So QuickBooks will connect you to Next Insurance is one of them for business insurance, but depending on your state, depending on, they'll connect you to insurance companies to try to get it if you don't have a local insurance agent. The same thing with these funding ones and this talk to a bookkeeper. It's through QuickBooks Capital to see what you can get and then talk to a bookkeeper. You will have to hire QuickBooks if you were doing this. So just be aware that there's costs in regards to some of those items. The next screen you're going to see, you know, once you're in that dashboard, you're getting things done was what we just talked about. This business overview is just a little bit of everything in regards to your company. It's allowing you to see in pretty pictures where certain things stand. So, and you can move a lot of them around if it's not a look that you like, and you can also change the amount of time that's in regards to what these things say. So if it makes more sense to you to know what your cash flow is for, 3 months or 6 months versus seeing the whole entire year, you can change that. But this basic layout that it gives you is a cash flow forecast of where it thinks you stand. It takes all your information from a certain period of time and it predicts for the next couple months of where it thinks you're going to be in regards to income and money out. It is helpful for people that have a steady income and steady expenses all year round. For some of us here on the Cape, it's not really that useful because we do make a lot of our money from June through, say, September, October. So it can't predict that you're going to have this massive increase in cash for these 4 or 5 months, and then it's going to go down to nothing basically in January and February. So again, it gives you pretty much of a good overview of where things have been historically, but it's not exactly 100% for cash flow purposes. Down here, you get your profit and loss in a quick view. It tells you, what is your net profit, how much income you've had, how much expenses you've had. It does also tell you that there are so many accounts, so many transactions in your checking account or credit card that you have not reconciled. So those numbers are not included. So if we had an expense here that was $5,000 because we did a major purchase for inventory and it was part of that review that we will get into when we start talking banking in the next class. But if that is in there, that is not going to be added to this $2,000. So just keep that in mind, that if there's numbers here for saying stuff that to review, these numbers are only going to reflect the stuff that has been accepted. You can change the date as well. So if you want this to be last month, if you want this to be this month, if you want it to be year to date and continue to just add on information, you can do that as well. You can do that to all of these. This kind of cuts off the little screen, but there are I believe there are 3 little dots that on the bottom of some of these squares that you can connect, that you just check them. And one of the options are to hide the widget, or you can expand on the widget. So you can play with some of them, the profit and loss is one of them. It is stuck there, but these expenses and invoices, you could go away if you wanted them to. And speaking of these expenses and invoices, it basically just breaks down the same thing for you. So the profit and loss is both of those together. This is just your expenses. It tells you if you're up or down in the last few days. You can change it around again. You can look at where the majority of that money is spent. It will only have enough room for about 5 little bullet points. If you have anything else, it just kind of throws it in other. But it tells you where you're spending most of your money. And the same thing here is on your invoices. It's how much money has come in the certain period of time, how much money has been deposited, not deposited. Is there anything that's overdue? And we can follow up on that after. And then the last thing this shows is over here, gives you a quick view of what your checking account balances are and being able to go in there and to approve certain items. So again, this whole point is just to be able to break it down, kind of have a pretty little picture for you. And you don't really do too much with it beyond, a lot of people will go directly into their check registers from here. This planner is here for some people to use if they want. It's a cash flow planner. Again, I was just saying, it's not as useful for us here on the Cape or anybody that kind of has a seasonal ups and downs, because without a lot of work, you can go into it and obviously change it and to do what you need to do. But it's not a quick, hey, let me just run this report and QuickBooks does it all for me. I do think I was reading that this may possibly be going away, but I'm not completely sure of that. But it is a cash flow planner. It just pulls your information from the last few months and it predicts a few months ahead. And it just says, this is what you think it thinks you should be. And then therefore you don't know for those of us on the Cape, again, you're bringing in your money from May or June through September and October, but how far is that money going to last you? Is it going to last you until February or March when it can start to pick up again in the spring? You might be able to use this to kind of analyze some of that information.
Crystal, can I interrupt you for a moment? We have a question in the chat that from Mike Palmer. His QuickBooks Online doesn't show business overview on these tabs. It shows cash flow. So he's asking, how can he get it to show business overview?
This is where Pam and I were actually talking about a lot of QuickBooks is driving me personally crazy. They're doing a lot of upgrades in the background. So some of those we can change, some of those you can't. It depends on what version you're in as well. So I'm going to say that you most likely are not going to be able to change it, but you would want to maybe take a look at what your account settings are, or go back into your billing and subscription to see which version you're in, and maybe there's a way to change it. But as of right now, a lot of these items that are here are QuickBooks in the background, just changing things. And unfortunately, they're just changing them in a way that doesn't make sense to a lot of us professionals. So hopefully that answers your question. Pam, did you have something as well?
No, I was just gonna bring that up, and I know that sometimes if you can't find what you're looking for, I've had people be able to like switch to accountant view as opposed to the business view, and then they can find it because it's laid out a little bit differently there. But the business view definitely uses the language that you're used to using versus language an accountant uses.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Pam. That it for questions, Trisha? We're good? All right.
We are good.
Okay. So we'll get a little bit further into those estimates, those invoices that I spoke about before. We're going to kind of show you what those screens look like, what you're going to be able to do with them. Sometimes I like to throw out little examples of stuff that, what makes sense. So we'll just go, and we're going to start off with just the customer center itself. This customer center, you're going to get through by going to sales, and you're going to either choose customer on the little pop-up list, or you'll just see it in the background like this as a little tab. What this customer center tells you is it gives you a good overview of the list of all your customers. If they happen to owe you some money, any kind of personal information that you've put in there. And it also shows you a little pretty picture of everything that is owed to you, that has been invoiced to them, and have they paid you. So we'll get started. The first thing is this little bar chart here that's all colorful. It's a way to kind of make it pretty for you, and just to see a quick thing of how many estimates do you happen to have out there that you may need to follow up on, and to see, or have you made sure that you've converted them all the way that you are supposed to. So it will give you an idea of what there are. If there are any, it tells you an amount, it tells you how many there are. You can also click in this little blue bar, and it will bring you to the estimate screen that looks somewhat similar like this, but it will tell you what the estimates are, what's open, and who it goes to. The same thing with invoices for all of these. Your unbilled income is exactly that, what's outstanding that you put in as you've been billed by your vendor, but you have not invoiced your customer yet. So you've marked it as a billable expense, but you haven't sent out that invoice to your customer. Sometimes it's just good to know that there's money out there of, oh, I got to go get that money and go invoice that customer to see what we can do in order to make our cash flow better. So moving on, the next one is your overdue invoices. So it gives you kind of an idea of your overdue invoices, how many there are, how much money there is, and kind of go from there. It does, if this was for some reason, this was 20 and whatnot, if this orange bar would definitely be longer. It kind of just makes it so it's visually good for you. You're able to, business owners are able to read it relatively quickly. This one is also your invoices and credits of what's open. It doesn't mean that it's past due or anything like that. It just means that they're open. It's still outstanding. You haven't been paid for it. You also have a quick view here of what has been recently paid. If you had any questions, you just click in the little green bar. It brings up all your recent checks and all your recent deposits, who they came from. how much they were, whatnot. So again, nice little pretty picture to kind of give you an idea instead of just scrolling through all of this information down here to kind of figure it out. It does add it for you. These customer types you can add for individual customers if you were tracking them. Sometimes this is a good way of if you have referrals. So anybody that's photographers, graphic designers, you know, bookkeepers, all of that stuff. If you're getting referrals and for you would like to track like, hey, who's giving me what kind of people and what kind of things are coming my way, you can actually create a customer type. So when you're putting in your new customers, you can say, okay, this came from this CPA firm or this bride or whoever it may be. You can divide those up and make them as customized as you need to. So you can, that's where they would go here. You create a new customer here. So we're going to just kind of talk a little bit down here of just what this is. I mean, this here is just going to be what your customers, who your customers are. You know, if you've put in the names, you know, sometimes people put Jane Doe, but they actually come from Amy's Bird Sanctuary. So that's just the difference in this examples. We kind of just have them all the same. Any kind of phone number. You can see the addresses if you want. You can do the open balance. And here you have that they owe you money. You can do receive payment. If they do not owe you any money, you can create an invoice. Those are the default from QuickBooks. But if you click this little arrow, it will bring up a whole thing. And I think that's on the next screen to show you. But just up here, I would like to point out that if you didn't want to see the customer name or you did want to see the address as well, you would do that up here in this little gear icon. There's a couple different options you can check and uncheck. So you can change this view to customize it to what you need. And speaking of my little arrow, this little arrow here lets you create different types of items as I was talking about for your customers. So it allows you to create the invoice as we discussed. If you didn't want to create an invoice and you just needed to use create sales receipts, you could create that here. If anybody used an estimate, you can do that as well. Your payment link, you can send that to your customer. It is just a different way of looking at your QuickBooks invoices. It gives you a whole link and it just shows up right there on your customer screen so they can open it from their phone, from their iPad, go right to the payment screen, enter their payment information and be good to go. It's a lot quicker process than what the invoices are because sometimes they have to go find them through your email, go find the invoice, hit pay, enter in all their information and go. So some customers are leaning a little bit more towards this payment link, but that again is just your choice of how you want to bill your customers and how you want to allow them to pay. You can create a charge, you can create a time activity if somebody is working on that job. You can create a statement if they owe you money for multiple months or for the past month that they just want to know how much is out there. It gives you a statement that just summarizes all the invoices. It also, lastly, just makes that customer inactive if you are no longer doing business with them.
Hey, Crystal, if they come back and you've made them inactive, can you reactivate them?
Yes. So up here in the gear icon, there's an option that it says show inactive ones. You just click that and it will show both of them. And then you can just reactivate it from there. Did I miss anything else? We're good? All right, so let's just dig into those customer details that we're going to see that we saw on that summary screen. So once you click on Amy's Bird Sanctuary, it's going to pop up with all the information for you. It's going to put in your company name, your billing address. You can have any kind of internal notes that you would like on here. Summary of what they owe you. You can create new transactions. You can edit the information that's in here as well. You know, so right now we're not so sure if we have their work phone number and their cell phone number. So we're going to do edit. We're going to make sure we add that. But mainly the important part is down here. It's going to show you all the transactions that you've done with Amy's Bird Sanctuary. It's going to show you that is it a time activity? Is it an invoice? Is it a payment? Is it a sales receipt that they came in and done? What is it that you've done? If you've put in any kind of memos, that's also going to show up here. So, and then you're also going to be able to show up, is there a balance? Is there not a balance? What's happening? Did I bill somebody? I see some time charges for my client, for my employees. Did I bill that onto the client appropriately if I needed to? So you can do that from here. This gives just all this information as I was going over. It allows you to view and to edit any kind of estimates or billable charges or a time charge that are listed for that customer. You can convert it to an invoice when the timing is correct. You can apply credits. You basically find all that information in this little down arrow. Then again, in this little gear icon, you can change what you are able to see and what you're not. And I actually skipped over this section. Sometimes this comes in handy too. If you need to just see what only time charges for this customer, because this is somebody that you bill, on a weekly basis, and you've done business with them for years and years, and there's just bunches of transactions that you do, you can sort it, just only show what you want, only show the checks that the payments that they've sent me, only show invoices and the time charges that our employees have done, and kind of find what you're looking for from there. And again, you can do only show me the closed ones, only show me the open ones, have it be a specific date, and so forth. We don't really go in the next screen to discuss statements nor late fees really, but I'll just touch base with them here. Statements is just a list of statements that you have sent to the client. It goes by month or whatever time period you've done, and it just shows what invoices and what credit memos are still open at that particular period of time. Any kind of late fees, not a lot of people not a lot of people have used it. I'm honestly not sure I've even seen a client use them. But this is just something that if you've set up that there's an 18% interest charge and you charge late fees if it's past 30 days, you set it up with QuickBooks so it can show up for a specific and a specific line item, and then it just shows up here.
Crystal, I have a couple of questions in the chat. Is this a good time?
Yeah.
Okay, the first is from Kristen Russell, and she's asking if you can send a payment link and thus accept a credit card through QuickBooks and skip an additional merchant account for credit cards.
If you can send an invoice and skip the credit card, is that what you just said? I missed that part.
Can you send a payment link and thus accept a credit card through QuickBooks and skip an additional merchant account for credit cards?
So if you accept a credit card so if your account is set up through credit cards, it's going to show up on that payment link unless you've disabled it. So you're not going to be able to avoid the credit card fees if you're allowing them to do that. However, if you have an invoice and you do you can put a line item on that invoice for what that 3.5% is and charge that customer for that percent. And that's kind of a way it increases your sales slightly, but then it offsets that credit card, that merchant fee charge.
Thank you. And I have one other question about invoices. Sarah says that there used to be a way to, quote, add a line via the plus sign, but that seems to have gone away with the new invoice template. Is there a way to add it back in?
And add a line with the little plus. Oh, I see what you're talking about. We're going to go into invoices in actually just a couple minutes. I'll touch base with that in a minute.
Great. That's all we have in the chat right now.
Okay,
thank you.
Perfect.
Hey, I have one other question. This is my own. On that item about the credit card fee, isn't it technically illegal in Massachusetts to charge the customer for the credit card fee directly?
Not anymore.
Oh, they did change that finally?
Yeah, as of, I want to say it's 4 years ago. I mean, it could be almost 5 at this point, but it's been a few years that they allow you to do it. You have to be very careful in the wording. So if somebody was going to, to just get into a little bit further into that conversation, be careful with the way you word things. Just go on to massachusetts.gov and go look it up to be able to know what you can and cannot do. Because it's basically you're offering a cash discount more than you are if you don't have that cash discount, then you're allowed to use credit cards, but we're going to charge you a fee because of that. So you can't just, don't make it as simple as credit card fee and just be done. I would go to, if you were gonna think about doing that, I would do a little bit more research and go to mass.gov and just know all the ins and the outs of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we were talking about the little tabs. I kind of discussed statements and late fees a little bit. The one that you are going to deal with, especially in the beginning when you're setting up these customers, you're going to be able to, is this customer details. So you can add all these details for your internal purposes of your customers. So you're going to be the customer name, the email, the phone number, any kind of different phone numbers that they happen to have. You know, sometimes it's easier, you call, you know, the wife for the office stuff, you know, for accounts receivable, but you call the husband when they're going to do deliveries and purchasing, you know, because they're, you know, a husband and wife team and certain people do certain things. So you can write those little notes kind of in here, have the different phone numbers for what you need. So it's just, it's basically a way to kind of have a CRM within QuickBooks without having to pay for the extra CRM, you know, until you need it. So a lot of the information that you do put in there though, will show up on the invoices. So just be careful of where you're putting things and what you're doing. Don't just put like, you know, a phone number and then just kind of write a little note of he's stupid, because it is possible that the customer is going to see he's stupid on the invoice, and that's just not nice. So just be careful, kind of keep it strict to what it is. You can do little notes and attachments and stuff down here if you need to. But again, you know, your different phone numbers, your website, any kind of notes that I was just talking about, different billing addresses versus shipping addresses, the terms that you give them every single time. So if you have normal net 30 terms, but you're giving this one particular customer net 60 or net 45 every single time, they're not just one-offs, you can change it in here. So every time you do an invoice for them, it's going to just automatically show up as net 45 versus your normal net 30 that you do for everybody else. Again, if you had to store a payment method, this is also where you would do that. If you have a preferred delivery method of, you know, when you're doing statements and invoices, if they don't want them automatically emailed to them and they actually want you to throw them in the mail at the end of the month, you can kind of have a little note here. That will also show up on all that paperwork as well, of a little checkbox that just says to be printed, so that way it already knows and you don't have to check those things every single time. Again, customer type, where I said that comes in kind of handy for referrals. But some other industries might have different kind of things, and this just makes it easier for you to run the reports and to know which customers fall under certain types. And if you have people that are doing multi-languages, you can kind of put their, you know, what's their primary language that they speak, to know what needs to be done. You can edit any of this information up here with edit, like I showed on a screen or two before, but at least you go into edit and then it allows you to type an ad and gives you all the same stuff. So now you've entered all of this, you've got all your customer details. Instead of going back out and adding a new invoice if you need to, or a new estimate, you can do it up here with these green button. It says new transaction, but if you click the little arrow, it will say create an invoice, create an estimate, you know, kind of basically the same screens as a couple screens ago with that pop-up list. Oh, and I didn't put here, you can add attachments. So if you have a customer form that they fill out, and you keep on track, you keep handy for you, you can, and it's digital, you can actually store it in QuickBooks, just for easy access if you have that information for them. You guys are good. So it doesn't look like there's any further customer questions. We're going to just go into the invoice one that we just skipped over. Okay, perfect. The invoice screen, I'm going to point out first. Oh, I thought I was going to point out, but I will go back. Some of you are going to look at two different versions of QuickBooks. We are still on the older one for this presentation. So as I'm going over some of these things, don't be surprised if you kind of happen to go in and your screen looks something similar like this versus the other one. You're able to see the same things. It's just a little bit different of what you're doing. So you're going to see this products and services. You're going to be able to add these lines in, which I think is answering the question that was before. You can't really do that little plus thing because I believe QuickBooks took it away, which I agree with you is very easy to just do the little plus sign. You can put the feedback in there, but for them to try to bring it back, if you want to roll the dice. But again, it's right here. You have to add this product and services, or if you just continue hitting tab once you're done, it will bring a second line up for you. So again, it's just, this is the new screen. It's got some customization, some fees, and you can change the design and what you allow your customers to pay or not pay. You can edit directly over here. I'm going to show you some screens that are usually down here. It's now up here in the beginning. So with that being said, this screen just happens to be an estimate. It's going to look the same for invoices as well in the new one. But let's start talking about what an estimate actually is and how to create one and, you know, what to look for, how you can look for it. So estimates are not used by everybody. You do not have to use them in QuickBooks in order to get an invoice. You are going to use them if your particular business or your particular industry does allow them to do estimates. So sometimes you have construction people that like to use them, like landscaping type of things, you know, some graphic designers, some photographers, type of thing. Those type of industries usually do use estimates. So this is where you would create. So you're going to go to sales, you're going to choose estimates, or if you are already in the sales tab, you can do the little tabs on the top. So we're here, we're in the estimates. It's going to show us our normal summary screen that shows on all the other things that we've discussed. Same information, you know, it's just condensed into what the estimates are. You can change them based on date, based on status of what you're looking at. If you had these checked off, you can do some batch actions, which are convert them at once, make them inactive, or you can delete them for good. So if you had a very long list of these that you needed to get rid of, you could just select them all or select the certain ones and just delete them off if you were done. So this is just going to show us, you know, how many estimates do we have? It's going to show on that little bar of like these, so much was out there in estimates that were done. This is what they are. It's going to give you some options of if it was converted, if it's pending, if it's been declined, that status will show up here. Again, you can do edit, print it, you can convert it to an invoice if you need to from the time, either from here, or you can create it from up here. So we're going to do create estimate in this little green box. And you're going to get one of the two screens. You're going to get the new one, or you're going to get this old one that we're going to look at here. So you want to make sure that when you do create estimate, that if the customer's name is not already there, you're going to put it in. If you're going to end up emailing it to them, you want to make sure you put it in their email or that it automatically populates. When it does automatically populate, it's going to show their billing address, you know, and then it's going to have today's date, most likely. It's going to today's date. There are some settings that you can do in QuickBooks that it just enters to the last date that you entered a transaction, and that could be saved, but most likely it's going to be today's date. If you're doing estimates, you do not have to have an expiration date. I do believe that it's worth it, even if it's a year later. You can just have that put in something, just so you're protecting yourself. You know, prices change, materials change, stuff like that. So you don't want to give an estimate to somebody today and have them come back at you a year and a half later and say, okay, I'm expecting this estimate to be $75, but in charge, you know, your materials cost is doubled. So it makes an uncomfortable conversation. Whereas if you have some expiration date, if it's 6 months, a year down the road, that you'll still honor it. And you're less likely to have that awkward conversation of like, oh, I can't give you that estimate because blah, 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 and my costs have doubled and all this list of changes. So just put it in there, put something in there, just to kind of protect yourself. Tags, again, this is how you would track them. if you needed to have it be if you chose to use tags for certain referrals, certain locations, just make sure they all stay the same consistently.
Crystal, I have a question in the chat on the estimate utility. They're asking if it allows to split the payment into multiple payments, prepayment, on completion, etc., or must the entirety of the estimate total be paid in full?
You can apply payments you can apply partial payments to the estimate once you turn it over to the invoice. You can't really, unless you have unless you're in like that advanced category that has project tracking, you're not going to be able to do, I mean, not project tracking, to just do, it's a cost associated with it for construction, that you do, that you're not going to be able to necessarily break it up into different things. You could, on your estimate, you could add this subtotal. So you can enter all your information in, design in this one, and then you can write yourself, write a little note to you and the customer, that says, this subtotal is due on this specific date, or as a deposit, or deposit number 2, that type of thing. But again, you can accept the different payments and only apply a certain percentage, but you can't necessarily break it out to say $100 is due in 30 days, another $200 is due 90 days, and the remaining balance of $300 is due at project completion, unfortunately. So if you have any more questions about that, you can reach out to Pam and Trisha, or you can just reach out directly to me and I can kind of walk you through it. But unless you have that advanced one, the answer is you can't break it up as much as you're just going to have to say a certain dollar amount is due now, apply that payment, and then you're going to track it internally.
Crystal, we got another question, slightly off track from this, but if a organization is a nonprofit, they have different options, correct?
Options
The
for what? Like the
nonprofit version?
wording of what these look like, or?
Their specific question was, if they're a nonprofit, does it change some of the options for categories in sales and other functions?
It changes, it does change them to the wording of them. So your verbiage is different in reporting. So instead of profit and loss, you're going to see a statement of activity. That type of thing does, but what you're able to set up in regards to projects and what you're in regards to, in regards to products, sorry, and in regards to customers, are basically going to be the same. Do you have anything to add to that? That I might have missed, Pam, since you do work with some nonprofits.
Yeah, no, the statement of activities is a good comment on that. And, income might not be exactly income.
Correct. It does say revenue, and you can set it up to be donations and stuff like that in nonprofits.
Yeah,
that's a good point as well. So again, it's the verbiage will change depending, and again, and with that, for being your industry and whatnot, but the actual product names or the actual customers and how they're treated is kind of all the same. Any other questions?
We have one more about accepting credit cards, and we may want to answer this one later, but let me ask it to you and you can tell us what we should do. So we have somebody that accepts credit cards payments, and currently when they come in, they're all lumped together in one payment per day. Do you recommend breaking this down?
Can we put that on the parking lot in order to discuss when we're receiving payments and when we talk about sales receipts?
Will do.
Thank you. We'll address that in a little bit, because we can get a little further into it.
And you'll hit sales tax, materials, and labor when we get to that section too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so we'll continue on. So we've got the estimate. You're entering in your product and services. You're going to make sure you have your description, which most likely will auto-populate anyway, and then your pricing, you just want to make sure you're the same. Again, I did point out by answering some of those questions there is a subtotal that you can add. So if you entered 3 or 4 items, you can hit add subtotal and it's going to show you what they are, and then you can continue on. This down here is going to show you the total of the full invoice. So again, as my examples before, you did the subtotal, you got $100, you know, $300 of the whole thing. The $300 will show here, the $100 will show as an individual line item. If you were to do any kind of discounts, you could do that as well from here. You used to have to do it as a separate line item, so it's kind of cool that you get the option here of you can, and then you can choose. You can do a 10%, a 15%, whatever happens, and it will automatically subtract it off your estimate or your invoice. And the same thing with the sales tax is depending on your state, how you have sales tax set up within your company. This will automatically show up with the right thing. So anything that is taxable, as long as it's set up properly, will just show up here and just add to your total. You would like to just down over here, you're going to have any kind of messages that can display on your estimate. If this here is going to be particular to this estimate. You can set up and customize forms and settings. You're going to show that something that shows up on every estimate. But you can write your notes here if you wanted to, that something specific to them. And then this is the same thing is if you needed to show up on a statement and have particular wording, you can do that as well. You know, you could just put something as design. So it shows up that this is your design estimate, this is your labor estimate type of deal. Any kind of attachments can be added down here. I don't think I've pointed out yet either, because we haven't really gotten to the screen of what these little things are down at the bottom. We are going to show the screen, I think, in a few, but we'll go over it a little bit now. If you open this up, you can print and preview it. Just make sure everything is lined up. It gives you a little pop-up, and then it can show you where to print and what you need to do. So that one's kind of self-explanatory. Make a reoccurring will show up on estimates. I don't know why, but they show up on invoices, and that makes a lot more sense to me. But if something was happening that you needed every single month for something to just show up, you can set it up once. You can just make this recurring. It gives you a little pop-up. It says, you know, how often, what dates would you like it to be, et cetera, and then it will automatically create it and can automatically send it to your customer if you want. So, and then if you didn't like something on this form or realized you do it, you can go into customize from here instead of having to go to the gear icon and whatnot. And then over here is kind of where the important thing is you can hit save. You get save and send. This little arrow in will show it in again, but it will show save and close, save and share link, and save and new. So therefore you can always just go, you don't have to send this to the customer if you didn't want to. You could just do save and new, move on to your next estimate, and just be good to go. So I just wanted to point out that you don't have to send it just because you have an email in there. You can send it at a later date. So now we've done estimates. You're going to see that invoices are basically the same thing. You're going to kind of treat them the same way. These are what you're going to actually bill, bill your customer and invoice your customer. So Pam, do you need to say something?
I have a couple of other questions, but why don't you do the invoices first? Because we were going to get through invoices today, right?
Yes.
And then we'll come back and address the other questions.
Okay, that will work. And Trisha, was that the same for you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so invoices, this is where you're going to ask the customer for money. So you're going to see the same screen that you see under estimates. You're going to see the same pretty screens up here at the top. You're going to be able to search them, and search them, do your different batch actions as delete or void them if you need to, and narrow everything down by date. So you can also see who owes you money and receive payment from here as well if you need to. Again, as it shows your status, whereas estimates were showing converted, this one I'll actually show you, are they due, are they overdue, and if they're overdue, how many, since when. So you're going to go in here, you're going to create an invoice if you need to, create invoice, and it's going to show you almost the same screen. So make sure you put your customer's name in here if it already wasn't there. You're going to make sure you tell them that your terms. You're going to have your invoice date, It should automatically set up on your due date if you have terms already set up within your company file. If not, make sure you just put one in there manually to do whatever it needs to be done, because you just don't want people to see it and then not pay you. You're going to enter your products and services in here. Again, I would make sure that these really do have descriptions. It just makes it easier on your customer, even if it is repeating some of what this is. Because some of your invoices, you may want to set up that they don't see this. This is only internal and the customer will only see the description and the price. So it is beneficial to just make sure something is written in here. Your various prices that you've got going on, as I talked about in estimates, you've got this little tax thing. So it's set up that SOD is a taxable item for your customer. So it's going to just automatically have this checkbox. For some reason, if you were going to do something, or I don't really have, it happens rarely. But there are some items that are taxable, but they're taxable in most things, and then they're not taxable in certain instances. If you were in that case, you could always unclick this, and it doesn't change it for the whole product. It just changes it for the one particular invoice.
Okay, so hang on one second while you're talking about tax. One of the questions that somebody asked was about applying sales tax to materials and not labor. And that is through each item that they create. They say whether it's taxable or not, correct?
Correct. You can apply a tax down here manually if you needed to for some reason, but the majority, I would say a good 99.5% of the time, you're going to have them set up individually in your products and services list.
And then you can click it off here if something was wrong.
Exactly. Sometimes you even notice that you did make a mistake in that product and service list. You realize like, oh crap, why is this design set off on taxes? And so you see it here, you can unclick it to make sure the invoice is correct. And then at a later time, you go back in and change it so your future invoices are showing, you know, future things that are using that product are correct. We're all just human. So if you've got human error, that can get involved with adding in that product and just making a simple mistake.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So you've got all your design, you know, you got all your information. These lines and subtotals stay the same. You treat them the same way I was discussing with the invoice. The same thing here with your messages and on your statement and your invoices. This one looks like it was something that you just automatically have set as a company. But again, you can make it as personal or not as personal as you want. If for some reason you had a message that was to everybody and you didn't want it, go in there, delete it. Like, you know, you just delete it, it deletes on the same invoice, and then nobody sees it. And then you can attach things if you needed to. This was what I was talking about, where it comes up as a save and new, save and close, save and share link. So you don't always have to do what this says. You know, this green button says you change it to what you need to do. Sometimes you are going to run into expenses that you also need to invoice to your customer. So those are called billable expenses in QuickBooks. They are something that when you're adding your vendors, which we'll go over in next class, but the screens are basically the same except for you're invoicing a bill. And it's going to have a little check mark in this general area that says, is this billable? And if it is billable, to what customer? And you can enter it there. This is what it shows up for, like when you're going to invoice that customer after you've done that whole vendor side. So you've got your invoice, you started all your same information that's here. Instead of a product and services that you're entering, it will show up this nice little screen. You do not have to add the stuff to this just because it shows up. You could be saving something and only want to do it at the end of the month or at the end of the project, and that is more than fine. It is just going to show up. So every time you do an invoice to that customer, so be aware of that. But you can add all or just add the individual expenses when you are ready. You're going to have a screen that looks like this once you're done. So you're going to hit that add and it's going to show up here. The customer does not see what it is linked to. So I suggest that when you are doing this, although it's very convenient, so therefore you don't forget certain things or it doesn't get lost, or you have to end up showing a $5,000 bill at the end of a project for a customer for billables, you can kind of go along the way. I just strongly suggest put a description here. So therefore it just looks better to the customer. They're not saying, hi, I've got 46.98. What the heck is this for? Put something simple, miscellaneous materials. Like, they ask more detailed questions, then you can have a more detailed conversation, but make something that's here. Just put something there so it doesn't stay blank. And then if necessary, you can add these things on, as we were doing before. Pam, another question?
Yeah, can you go back one screen for a second? All right, so the question was not sure what this is referring to. So I believe the question is that understanding where these billable expenses came from, and they came from if you bought something at Ace Hardware that you were going to bill to this client. When you pay the Ace Hardware bill, you recognize that this is for this client, and it pops up here to help you make sure that you added it and didn't forget to bill the customer for that item. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Is Sarah good?
Yeah, the ACE bill, we're going to talk about so right now we're doing the first part about the invoices. Next class, we're going to talk about paying for things that you buy. Okay.
I have another question. It's in the chat. Lana is asking how you can duplicate an invoice if it's the same each month, except for the different, the month changes, but everything else is the same.
So everything else is the same. So you could go down here and make it a recurring transaction. So if you put in your first one and it was where we were here, like something like this, these are the same. You are constantly going to add the 1425 all the time. So you can make it recurring. It will ask you in the little pop-up if you want to, how often you want to do it, if you want to invoice the customer or not. And that, that was where you would go in order to, that's probably the easiest way in order to do that. It will just let QuickBooks do its thing.
Thank you.
I'll put on our parking lot just to show that in the live session.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Well, this may come up in the parking lot, but there was a follow-up to that recurring question. What if you want to duplicate it and change some details, not exactly the same?
So if you want to just to copy it and then to go in and make this say 20, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Great. When you, where is it in this new one? There is an option. Pam, I'm having a mind blank, but it is down here where you can just duplicate it. I just forget where it is.
Yeah, it's not showing it right now.
Okay.
I'll make a note to do that too.
Okay. There is, I thought I was having my, but there is an option down here if you go into a QuickBooks and you're live. There is down here in the screen that you click on it and then it says duplicate, and then you can duplicate the same transaction and then just go in here and make it, I think I just said 20 as my example, but you can change it to whatever you need.
I put that on the parking lot list so we can show it.
Okay.
I got another question. Can you add a markup to materials which is taxable, but not the underlying material because the sales tax was paid when the material was purchased?
So you can create markups. You would handle that in your products and services when you were setting them up. You can also, I believe that there's a way that you can set them up here as well and to be able to show the markup, but I would have to go over that in more detail.
Okay, so I'll add that to the live session too.
Trisha, I'm kind of waiting for you to like pop in with one more.
No,
You're done.
You can
continue
the chat
on
is
the
empty.
invoice. I
Okay.
have two other ones that I'm holding on to because they're not exactly related to this. So why don't you finish the invoice piece and then I'll ask those.
Okay, perfect. There's only a couple more screens in regards
Yep.
to this anyway. So, we're just going to skip, so we've kind of answered a lot of the questions in regards to invoices. The ones that we don't answer, we can do in live, or we'll kind of follow up with you guys afterwards. But, to go to back to the original invoicing screen, this was maybe, I should have kind of discussed earlier, but this little arrow, again, you get these arrows whenever they show up, whatever they're under. If it's a bill, if it's an estimate, if it's a credit memo, any of that stuff, you know, customers, there will be another list of stuff that shows up. So in this particular instance, when we're talking invoices, not only to edit and receive payment, but you can duplicate it, which kind of answers that one question. But there is a way when you're in there with the invoice, as I showed you on the bottom, but you could do it from here. To be able to do it, you can just send it to the customer. You can say, oh crap, the customer, this one's 45 days past due. I'm just gonna send a reminder. Same, share the link as we did before. You can print a packing slip, or you can void and delete it as necessary. And then the last thing in regards to those invoices is some of the questions in regards to payment. So you're going to receive payment here or from the new screen, however you get there. You're going to get a screen that pops up here, kind of looks similar to the other ones. It's going to show your list of invoices that are showing open to your customers. It's going to automatically do today's date. You have an option to say, was this a check? Is this cash? Is this credit card, etc. You're able to put a reference number if you needed. And then you can deposit it to wherever you need it to be. So it does allow assets to be set up. Most of you are not going to use that. You're going to use either banking accounts or you're going to use undeposited funds. And we'll talk about undeposited funds in just a second. But so you're going to go in, you got your information here, you've got an amount that you can put in. This is where we were just talking about if you can do, you know, the deposit and, you know, payment number 1, payment number 2, payment number 3. If you had the invoice that had that full total, you could just kind of change that number up here. You could just be like $700. $700 would show up here, and so therefore they'd still show that the $725 was due, but they did give you the $700. But toward this example, they're going to pay the invoice in full, so they're going to just put the amount in. QuickBooks will most likely tell you which one it's going to go to. So if those numbers match perfectly, QuickBooks is going to say, okay, it's going to go to this invoice and you're good. Customers don't always pay in time. So, you know, sometimes an invoice gets skipped. Sometimes you have to go back after them and ask them the questions, that type of thing. So it's not always going to be in order. So just keep that in mind. And again, save and close to do what you need to do. Undeposited funds. So everybody gets confused on this. Undeposited funds is just a placeholder account for when you're receiving when you're receiving payments from customers. So if you've got 5 customers and they're each going to give you $100 check, but you're only going to the bank and you're going to just put in one $500 deposit, you're going to duplicate your entries in QuickBooks especially if you are using banking transactions. So you're going to double your income if you do not use undeposited funds. So you want to take those 5 checks that you've got from your customers as $100. You want to go in and have them apply to as a bank account. You don't want to go to the same checking account as we showed in the previous screen. You want to go to undeposited funds. Do that for all those 5 transactions. Then you're going to do I don't think we showed this.
No, but I can put that, we explain it and I'll put it on the live.
So, okay. So as Pam said, we're definitely going to go over this again. So anybody that stays for the third one, will show it in the live version. But those 5 accounts for $100 piece, those 5 checks that you're going to put them into undeposited funds. Then when you're ready to go to the bank, you're going to go up here to new, and then it's going to show bank deposit on the far right. You're going to pick that. It's going to do a little pop-up, you're gonna have those 5 checks there, you're going to check them all off, and you're going to put the $500 in the bank. That's how it moves to the check register. So you're just applying it to undeposited funds as a placeholder, then you are taking it out of undeposited funds and putting it into your bank when you physically do that, in order to avoid double entry in regards to your income.
It also makes it so much easier when you're reconciling your bank account to have them in there as the exact amount that matches your bank statement, because otherwise you're spending hours adding things together to get them to match up to the bank statement.
Absolutely agree. It saves you a heck of a lot of time by just chasing what does this equal, what does that not equal, all of that stuff. It just says, okay, $500 and $500, we're good to go, move on to the next one. If
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, if for some reason you were running your profit and loss and you did see that your income was a lot more than what you were expecting it to be, I would start here with this undeposited funds account and look at what you're going through. So if you're gonna go find it, you're gonna go transactions, chart of accounts, you're going to find it under other assets, and then you can just view the register. This should not have an amount, or if it does have an amount, it should equal the checks that you are holding to go to the bank. So in this next screen, we're going to show how it offsets and it brings it down to 0 because they put everything in the bank that they needed to and went into the checking account. But here they took this pool cars from accounts receivable, they put it into undeposited funds, but they didn't go to the bank yet. So therefore, that's why it's showing an amount of money here, and that's acceptable. Like, that's good. I've seen people that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in this undeposited funds account, and that just tells me that there's a problem. You know, so this is kind of the space to look for it. You should see everything kind of offset like these two are doing. You know, it might not be the very next day, but it should be, you know, within the week per se, that you should see, okay, this went here, I received that payment, then it went into deposit into the checking account. And as Pam said, we're going to discuss that in the live one, so we can go a lot more further, but I would like people to just bring your questions then, because it is kind of confusing sometimes. What were you going to say before I touch base with this last one?
Oh, we are at time.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
gonna say we'll start here next time, but I have 2 questions that I want to ask. So feel free if you are if you need to go, feel free to hang up and we'll see you again in a week. But I'm gonna ask 2 questions related to credit cards from Ashley and Kristen, and one more question that just came into the chat.
Okay.
So
Thank
the first
you guys,
one,
but we'll stay for the questions for the ones that are going to stay.
yep, but nobody has to because we're at 11 o'clock and we don't want to keep you longer than your commitment. So the first question is, what is the best format to request when inputting your monthly bank statement?
Are you doing it manually, or is QuickBooks set up to automatically take it from your checking account? So that's the first question, is if QuickBooks is automatically set up in the banking category, then you're just going to look at that review column and then you're going to accept and change as needed.
This says manually.
Okay, so if you're going to enter them manually, depending on how many you have, sometimes it's just easier to enter them. You know, you get the checking, you get the bank statement, you just go in, put in this new, you put in new expenses, or you go into the bank register and you can put in new expenses and just start typing them in. There are options where you can import them from a CSV file if you are set up that way. So it kind of depends on how technology driven you're at, I guess. You know, and how good you have a PDF to an Excel converter call kind of plays into that as well.
Did that make sense, Wayne? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next question is sort of a topic we haven't addressed yet, but when someone was asking, how do you disconnect a credit card? So we're talking about a credit card that they're using to purchase things. They have them connected to download the transactions, but they're finding that there's one they're not using anymore and it keeps downloading.
So if you're in the banking transactions, which you can find from the dashboard, or transactions in the banking transactions, you're going to have the screens up at the very top here that are showing their different credit cards and different checking accounts. If you go up at the top, I believe it's in the top right, it's going to say something like edit account or edit bank transaction, something along those lines. You get two options. I just don't remember the exact verbiage. If you go into the one that says edit banking, at the bottom of the thing, it's going to have a little check mark that you can say disconnect.
So Ashley, if you try that and it works for you, great. If it doesn't, bring your question back next time and we'll be able to take a look at it. And then the other question was related to sort of batching credit cards. So hold on. Kristen. Okay, currently I'm accepting fee for service that is annual, which may or may not be renewed. Through this, I have a merchant account that takes all the payments and I get a lump sum payment per day with all of their payment info. Would you recommend I break this down in QuickBooks?
It depends on what you want to internally track. So if you decide that you need to know that Amy's Bird Sanctuary sold, you did so much amount of business with them and so much with cool cars, et cetera, then you should break it out at least on that summary version. So if you have a $10,000 deposit and $5,000 goes to Amy's Bird Sanctuary, $2,000 to cool cars, and the remaining balance to Freeman's Goods, Sporting Goods, yes, you should break them out. And then yes, you should take out the merchant fee and have that be overhead. If you do not need to go into that detail because you have that information in, say, that merchant that you're using, you can just put it in under general category of sales or income or whatever you're using as your just general product revenue account, and you can throw it in there. So the question is, I like to see them broken out because I like to be able to see, like, okay, you're doing business with these people and there's more or less than what you think it is. But you don't have to, as long as the income is being recorded properly.
Yep. And if their POS system is tracking that list of customers, then they still have it.
Correct. And that's why I said, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was basically, I said, use QuickBooks for what they were doing because they had a POS system that kept track of the emails and the customer names and all of this stuff, and it was a retail store. And I said, keep all that stuff and all that information in your POS, and then use QuickBooks for your credit card and your banking transactions and leave it that simple. That might be the case for you. It might not be, but that's your decision to make.
All right, Kristen said, very good answer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, now I think we got through all of the questions that were there. We have 4 things to review when we get to the live session, which included showing reoccurring transactions and what you click to be able to do that and what that looks like. Using an existing transaction to duplicate and edit. I think we got that, but we can still do that there. Markup on materials where they paid the tax on their purchase, but they still have to collect tax from the customer on their markup. And just to make sure that how to apply undeposited funds when you're making a deposit.
Sounds right.
If anybody has any other questions that I didn't list or I missed them in the chat, please chat them to us before you head out. All right. Well, then we will see everybody